Charlotte, how long do you stare out the window? Where'd you get that idea from?
I was sat in a cafe Crema, and I saw a woman doing it out of the window and watching everybody. And I already had the sort of pigeony, creepy concept from the picture, and then I saw that and was like, I wish I was you. That's where it came from.
They work really well together.
Pigeons and
that idea of breaking through the glass and through the image is tremendous.
I've got one, it was kind of inspired by Brittany's talk, but it kind of relates to everyone really. By the way, just fantastic. That was so great. And I'm quite sceptical, and that was fantastic. I was really blown away. It was amazing to see all the stuff happening in Goldsmith. Everyone is just brilliant. And I was wondering about, this is all about narrative, and Brittany, you're talking a lot about how the narrative is a kind of relationship between the viewer or the reader and that narrative as well that's created. And I'm just kind of interested in your thoughts on the role of the author and the agency of the author in kind of that dynamic, because a lot of it was about narrative and the viewer and the endless possibilities, but also, literature is, the world is the creator of the author, as is photography. And I was just wondering where you think, and this is to everyone really, where the sort of the authorial agency comes into all of the narratives.
Might be a very interesting position to espouse with regards to all of you who are clearly writing. I'm a big proponent of the death of the author. I feel like once you put something out there, it's done, and I feel like that's the same is true for my work. I recognize that when I hang something, I basically give everyone the right to have an opinion about it. And I had this experience when I was doing my MA that somebody was trying to tell me what his work meant, and I was like, you can't do that. It's on the wall. Done. I can tell you what I think it means. You can't tell me if I'm right or wrong. And so that's very much the idea for the story that I incorporated in my talk. Was not the story I initially wrote. I took the picture, and then I gave a talk about it later, and I told the story in that, and then somebody came up after and was like, that story was completely wrong, here's what I thought when I saw the picture. And so I rewrote the story based on what this other person told me it was about, because it actually made a lot more sense. So I think, as an author, as an artist, you have to be really open to reinterpretations of your work if you want to have the best interaction with the viewer or the reader.
I think it's a really important question in terms of photography, though, because photography is one of the very few mediums where authorial intervention stops at a point, because it is always a record, as you were saying, it is always a record of something in reality. It is, no matter how much you rejig it and how much you do to it, it is always a snapshot of something which has actually happened, a moment which has passed. Therefore, I mean, it's a huge debate. It's an absolutely huge debate. But I think,
I think what you have to accept, I think both as a photographer and as an author, is that you have to leave space in your work for the audience involved. So you have your own kind of ideas about what you're meaning to say, but at the end of the day, texts work better if you don't meet people around by the nose through them, and I think it's the same with photography. I think if there's the element of mystery and backstory, then they work much better as pieces than other ones.
Yeah.
Can I pick up on that theme, Brittain, with you, which is, I was fascinated by the way that you do this. You take your first line, you take the photograph, and then it's open to the viewer to do it. But when you exhibit, if I go and look at one of those photographs, do I see the first line, or is it all for me to do up here based on what I see?
This was a debate
we
had for a long time.
Yeah.
And the first lines are here. And I'm not even now sure that I'm totally comfortable with that. I've displayed it in different ways. I think this is the third time it's actually been up. It's the first time it's been up here, but it was up a couple of times while I was.
We sort of went for the subtle option on not making the first line really loud and having it quietly in the shadows so that you can take it or leave it. You can pick the book and take it all.
We've kind of put it so you have to investigate it a little bit, but then also with the books, it's really important to have it with the book so you can, if you want to go further, if you want to kind of investigate that, the potentials of the failure of the work, that's available too.
As somebody who has worked with both kind of visual and text, I'm just wondering if you feel that there's a difference between, like with writing, when you read that first hugely overwritten sentence, which we actually did talk about in our MA course, so we can talk to you more.
Oh, that's brilliant! I'm so glad.
But I'm just wondering if you think, what is it about writing as opposed to visual imagery? Because I think with visual imagery, it's much harder to be overwritten in the same kind of way. I mean, I think most imagery you can still get something out of it, no matter how big and no matter how comic or ridiculous it is. Whereas with writing, it kind of can really stop you from actually entering into it. To not feel that.
I don't know that I totally agree, because I think there are some artists whose work I'm just like, what is going on? There's just too much.
Example?
No.
Try.
But I think that's always the kind of the challenge of the picture, is you really only do get so much. There is always a limit, and so in some ways it is clearer, but it is also necessarily more mysterious or obscured because it's necessarily fragmentary. So I think the challenge is maybe just to balance that and to try to give adequate information, but not too much, because you can give conflicting messages with an image. So yeah. That's a kind of disjointed answer, I hope that.
Well, the question's that disjointed.
You can overwrite, but I think you can also over-photograph.
First line, does it always involve a single person, single character?
In my head, it does. It doesn't have to. I never did any we's. I never did any things that necessitated having another person. The only one that has even a semblance of another person is the single man in possession of fortune, which has sort of a little bit of a man, but it's really more of a suggestion of a man than an actual man himself. And it was, to me, it was so much a work with the person who was in the pictures. That I'm not sure I could have done multiple people. I feel like it would have maybe disrupted the individuality of the reading experience.
Any more?
This evening was great, by the way. Thank you. I just noticed that when you were talking about just a little bit of a man in there, that obviously the rest of the images were always female. So throughout your series, there's always female.
Most of them.
And they're very feminine as well.
Yeah.
Very feminine females.
I have tried to take pictures of men a lot of times. And they just don't work. They're just not good. The picture of me as a man, I love. Just the only. I don't know why. I even have some that I thought were great when I was taking them, and I was so excited, and they're just abject failures.
Sure.
And I don't know why. I mean, this is very much about me in a way.
Yeah,
and
I
so
wonder whether it's because you're seeing yourself as
it
those
was
characters,
it was even transferring the a lot of them are actually a number of the texts are actually the characters are men, and this female character sees them as women because she's in them. I mean, she's very much my stand-in. As I say, I don't usually take pictures of myself, but she was a version of me in a lot of this project. It's not really intentional. I feel like eventually I'm going to find a project that has to have men and then it works. It's just, I think organically it hasn't happened yet, and it's not purposeful. It just kind of happened. I'm doing still likes at the moment, so, you know. Signed off from his entire
Any more? I'm happy. I wanted to ask a question to the writers and sing as well as the writers. Yeah, I was in tears, sorry. That really got me. I don't know why, it was amazing. You were all incredible. When all this started, I mean, you guys don't know how all this started, it's actually through one of my own photographers who's on the same course. And my other half here, Matt, who's amazing as well, and very smart, said, why don't you do something to do with spoken word? I have a friend who's a poet and does some interesting things. He was very busy, and he said, wouldn't it be really interesting to get some people together? And it's worked beautifully because the surprise of this has been amazing. We were all expectant, just like the pictures. We were all dying to hear what was going to happen. Tonight is the one, hopefully not the only. Maybe it'll happen again. Amazing, you know. But it's the first time this has all come together. I'm curious as to how you feel the process was in terms of what you expected, the response, and the whole sort of process of approaching something visual with the narrative in a different way than actually saying, okay, you're going to write a story and off you go. I don't know what your processes are like, because each of you seems to have a completely different angle, which has made it really interesting, I think, for everybody. If you could just tell us a little bit about that, because I think that'd be fascinating.
Well, my background is that, well, I don't have a long background, I'm only 21, but in my undergraduate at Warwick I did philosophy, and I just wanted to write the whole time. So what I did is I often just found myself taking source material and writing about the source material, so it was quite easy for me in a sense to pick a photograph and write something about it, because that's what I'm trained to do. I find it difficult to write about something which I don't have a source material for now. So I've really enjoyed it. However, the subject matter itself displayed in the photographs was a different thing. It was, to me, they felt like finished narratives in themselves in a way. So I found it quite difficult to add anything, you know, because apart from this one, which I could just write forever about, I wrote another song which I didn't perform, and I don't want to. But yeah, that one inspired me loads.
I wonder if that's just we all have one that we really hit it off with.
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know, what about you guys?
Yeah, I think I had the same sort of thing, of feeling as though you'd kind of, because you took the first lines and then you took the photograph, I was like, okay, well I can't really do anything else from that. I tried to write, you know, sort of narrative about all of the women all together, and it didn't kind of come together. But I've got a background in like textile art and stuff, and poetry, which is why mine was kind of a short story, spoken word type thing. And then I just kind of read up a lot about what you do. And I was like, it'd be really weird to write as though I was her, because that would be very, very creepy. So, so I thought I'd go for another photographer and then kind of examine a bit of the psychology behind it, as well as the, like I said, about the light, because I mean that's what I really enjoyed about the pieces. So it was kind of piecing together a narrative of process, really, and trying to bring to life something that is usually, because I mean you see text on a page and then when people read it aloud, that's kind of it, and that's why I kind of wanted to play around with pace and you know, word sound and stuff, which is kind of what I do a lot of anyway with the poetry background. Yeah, so it was an interesting, really interesting challenge, and I really enjoyed it, so thanks for the opportunity to do it, because it's really cool.
I guess I did it a bit differently. I kind of like you latched on to this and I latched on to this and the quote that went with it, because I like to write things that are kind of surreal and weird. So I was like, right, pigeons watching, done. I spent ages like looking at it and I was just like, there's nothing is coming out, and I just didn't know what I was doing. And then, as I said before, I was sat in the cafe and I saw someone doing that, and it's like, it lodged together, and then the narrative was there within minutes of that.
I was there that day, wasn't I?
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, I witnessed genius.
But I think it's like rubbing two stones together. You have to have the two right stones, and the spark comes.
And sometimes things just happen, and all of a sudden you just see it, and you're like, oh yeah, that's
it. Yeah,
it's meant to be.
I had a question actually, for you. I was wondering if I mentioned Roland Barthes. I wondered if you were influenced by him because he was, as you seem to be quite interested in the interweaving of literature and photography. Like that was his whole thing. Like, you know, his whole life he was trying to figure himself out through literature and he couldn't do it. And then he finally discovered that he'd been searching through the wrong medium and it was photography. But
I mean, you can't study photography and not read Bart. I mean,
well,
it's like not that.
Yeah.
But actually, it's not even that I found as interesting as some of his writing about literature. He has this I actually forget. I think it's from SC, but I'm not sure. This idea of a narrative as stories, as of a building, and it's the sort of the literal multiple levels on which something can simultaneously exist. And for me, that's really, really interesting in terms of reading and in terms of the work that I do now, where you can, you can pick up a story, you can read really quickly through the plot, and you can have a very satisfying experience, or you can consider one aspect of the text deeply and have a really, really different experience. And for me, that was actually a really helpful idea, that ability, that idea that all of these things can happen at the same time, that the experiences aren't necessarily exclusive. And I think that kind of plays into all of this idea of multiple readings.
Yeah, there was another really interesting comparison that I was just thinking about when you were talking earlier. You were saying, you compared your photographs to being like the end of a chapter break, which is similar to what I've been researching in terms of haiku. That like there's a cut. What's it called? You know that? Yeah, that's it. A cut in a haiku, like in this kind of what I was talking about, the emptying concept.
Yeah.
Oh, you cut through it.
A lot. That was really nice.
You cut through something and you take a section of it and you pull that out,
and it's a tone, isn't it?
Which is what photography is. You're slicing through life and capturing a moment of it, just like a haiku does, or just like
and the haiku is so necessarily limited. That you really have to get it right. No, I like that idea of emptying it out so that it can be refilled. I'm definitely going to use that.
I was citing it.
I'm very good at citing.
Everybody, yep.
I just wanted to say thank you so much. I found all of those really, really interesting, and I'm incredibly flattered that you found enough material in my work to make those things, because they were all really inspiring and really interesting and fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody, thanks. All of you for coming. If you want to write in the comments book, we'd love it, because if you want to write something, it'd be lovely, because it all gets passed back to everybody. And it's really nice for us to have a record of what people think. You might write something that you might not say out loud. That's fine by us. And just, thank you so much. What a wicked evening. I'm so...